Hey, everybody. Am I on? Excellent. Hey, all right, so before I get started, I'm about to deliver a presentation about biofeedback video games and their potential for mental health benefits. But before I do, let's first just give it up for this event, Frank and everybody on the DSCL team. Yeah? And while we're at it, why don't we also give it up for all the players that came out from far and wide and from the Netherlands. I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here watching. So let's give it up for our contestants. Great. So my name is Adam Lobel, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Radboud University in Nijmegen, where I do research about the positive effects of video games for social and emotional development. Are you guys with me? You guys with me? All right. So like many of you, I've been playing video games for a long, long time, right? So you can imagine how when I came to the Netherlands to do my studies, and I came to study psychology, I thought, well, that's all going to be behind me, right? All this gaming, that's in the past. Now it's serious. I'm going to be a scientist, right? Much to my surprise, about 3 years ago, I started doing this PhD. I started doing research about the positive effects of video games. So it's been quite an interesting journey for my part. So I want to describe to you now basically what the vision that drives myself and the people that I work with at my department. So in the United States alone, about 18% of people are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder every year. And over the course of their lifetime, about 28% of people in the United States will have an anxiety disorder. And to give you a very clear picture of what these anxiety disorders are and what they look like, I'm going to describe them for you. So anxiety disorders are typified by intense worry or fear when people are extremely overcome by things in their environment. This can be things like open spaces and heights, but it can also be social phobias, fears that people have of everyday interactions. And these anxiety disorders are typified by a number of symptoms. So some of them are physiological symptoms like increased heart rate, respiratory problems, but they're also typified by intense avoidance. So people with anxiety disorders are avoiding all sorts of scenarios that you and I take for granted. Interactions and things that we do in our everyday lives that are very easy for us, people with anxiety disorders have a very hard time. And people with anxiety disorders also, it's highly comorbid with other issues. So these people are also showing higher signs of things like depression, indicating that anxiety might underlie lifelong problems that people are dealing with. Now, I'm going to try to get my audience a little bit involved here. At what age do you think we start to see these problems creeping up? So what's the average age at which you think somebody is being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder? I heard 10. How old? 3 years old? Average? Well, I'm actually pretty impressed because the answers are quite on the younger side. So the actual age of onset is about 11 years old. So these problems are cropping up at a very young age, and they often persist for a very long time, right? This is a huge problem. Now, fortunately, psychologists have come up with very good ways of dealing with this problem. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, we typically teach people how to reappraise situations, how basically they learn how to think about negative situations in a more positive light. And we also teach them to become exposed to the things that they're afraid of. So we constantly put them closer in contact with the things that they think they're very afraid of to learn that it's actually not so bad, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is actually really great, but unfortunately, there are a couple of barriers to it getting out there and really helping as many people as we really could. So some of these barriers include cost. There's a tremendous societal cost as well as an individual cost to cognitive behavioral therapy. There also remains stigma. We do live in the 21st century, but people going to see a therapist is still a stigma issue. There's also a question of reach. Many of the people that need these therapies the most are the ones that are the hardest to get to, either because of their income level or because of their actual location. And actually, these therapy treatments can be quite tedious as well, right? They can be quite difficult for people to really get into and really perform the therapy the way that they need to. And this is why we think that developing mental health video games that are designed specifically to try to help people with these problems, is really the way to go. Because video games overcome all of these barriers. They're not nearly as expensive. There's not a stigma attached to playing a video game. They're not tedious, right? Because these things are really fun, engaging experiences that we're designing. So in our vision, when we think about these people with anxiety living in the shadow of this great fear and living in the shadow of these feelings of depression, we think that by designing video games, we can take them out from this and make them thrive, bring them into a much healthier lifestyle. And to this goal, basically, my supervisors, they created something called the Play Nice Institute. And the Play Nice Institute is basically an institute that by design creates these mental health video games. It creates video games designed to help people with these exact mental health issues. And the philosophy of this Play Nice Institute is to use game developers, use people that truly know how to design quality experiences, but then from the ground up involve people who know about the psychological research of how it is that these things need to be treated, to involve the people that you're actually going to be playing the games, involve the clinicians that know exactly what these disorders also look like, and involve them in the design process from the bottom up. And from there, that's where I come in. So people like me, myself, and my colleagues, we're there to do research on these games. We say, okay, you've got a game that's been designed and developed. Let's test. Let's see if it works. And when it works, the goal is to spread it out there, implement it in schools, implement it among therapists, and sell it out there on the market. We've designed a really fun game. Let's put it out there. So what I want to share with you guys now is an example of a couple of these types of games. So again, let's go back to our vision. Let's think about that 10-year-old kid, that 11-year-old kid who's dealing with these problems of anxiety. He's in school and just things in his life that, again, we take for granted are just very difficult for them. What would a game look like that might be good for them to deal with? And so to answer that question, I'm really happy to present to you guys this game called Mindlight. So Mindlight is a biofeedback video game designed for children between the ages of 6 and... Oh, you want to put the volume up a bit, please? Children wear headsets that measure how calm they are. They have to explore a haunted house. The more calm they are, the brighter the light shines. Players are encouraged to walk up to things that are scary in their environment and realize that they're really not that bad. Players need to concentrate on things inside their environment to light up the lights and bring light where there once was darkness. There are also puzzles in the game that are derived from psychologically tested ways of teaching people to attend to positive things in their environment instead of the negative things. So that's Mindlight. So just a little bit to describe a little bit how it works. So Mindlight uses a neurofeedback sensor that children wear on their heads. And the sensor measures how calm they are, how relaxed they are, which influences the light. And it also measures how focused they are. So when they're solving puzzles, they need to remain focused. And so when I say that this is a biofeedback video game, what's happening is children's brain waves are being read by the sensor. And the sensor is providing input then into the game. And the feedback is coming from the fact that the game then, of course, is providing feedback back to the player. So there's a constant feedback loop that's always involving their biological functions, right? Their brain waves. And again, the more calm players are, the brighter that the light will become in the game. And what's really great when you look at Mindlight and you watch people who play the game is you really see that this is truly an emotional experience for kids to do. This isn't a didactic experience where we're teaching you, oh, calm down, then everything will be better. It's an experience that embeds that into the core design of the game. And the result is a truly, again, emotional experience for children. So if we just look at an example of what some of the faces of these kids look like while they play, I think it becomes quite evident that kids are really investing themselves into this experience. Now, you might think that Mindlight sounds really fun and it's really interesting, it looks really cool, but it's for kids, right? It's not for you. So if that's what you're thinking, I want to present to you another game that's a bit more mature, but that uses a very similar sort of mechanic. And the name of this game is called Nevermind. Oh, right. So I should explain the game. In Nevermind, you play as a neuroprober, that is a therapist of the future. And as a neuroprober, your job is to enter the minds of patients who are also experiencing tremendous anxiety, but they don't know why. They have a memory somewhere in the back of their head that they've repressed and shoved away for a long time. And it's your job to go into their mind, and you basically are living in a manifestation of kind of their world, of where these problems arose from. And you need to solve puzzles in order to uncover what really happened to this person. And as you're solving these puzzles, the game is trying to do its best to freak you out. These are people that have experienced really traumatic things, and their mind is not happy that you're there, digging around. And the more excited you become in the game, measured by your heart rate, the more the game space is going to attack you and work against you, becoming more difficult for you to solve the puzzles and more difficult for you to progress in the game. So this is what Nevermind looks like. So that's Nevermind. Before I close, I just want to talk about why we find these things to be so exciting. So why we think that there's so much promise for these types of games for the future, and why we're so convinced that these games are going to be part of the way that we're dealing with mental health problems in the future. So the first thing is that these games are scientifically grounded, right? These games are born out of scientific principles, things that have been tested thoroughly by researchers as ways of actually overcoming these problems. So we know that by exposing people to things inside that they're afraid of, we can help them overcome it. We know that by encouraging them to relax, that they can overcome it. And we know that by teaching people to become more aware of their internal states, that they can better learn how to deal with the negative emotions that rise up in their everyday lives. And these are all, again, embedded into the game. And the second thing has to do with the fact that these games are just superbly well designed. These are truly games that are engaging and that embed these principles at every single level of the design. So these are games that both of them encourage exploration. They have meta challenges that players need to complete in order to overcome the entire game. And the design is deep and coherent. All of the themes that I'm talking about of fear, anxiety, getting stronger, getting better, are embedded inside every layer of the game. So those are the games I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to thank you all very much for your attention today. And before I wrap up, let me just first give a clear overview of where these games came from and how you can support them and follow them. So the first is Nevermind. Nevermind was developed by Flying Mollusk. This is Aaron Reynolds, the lead designer. And today and tomorrow, you can actually buy this game on Steam at a 40% discount. So if this is something that's interesting to you, just go for it. I've played it. I've sat across about 60 people playing this game. I've watched every one of them play, and till the end, I was still learning new small things about the game. It's really an incredible experience, and it's only going to keep getting better. And Mindlight is a game that was created in collaboration between the Gameplay Studio that's here in Utrecht and my supervisors at the Play Nice Institute. That's Isabel on the left and Rutger on the right. And a big shout out to the rest of my colleagues at our gaming group at the Radboud University. Thank you for your attention, and happy StarCrafting.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much, Adam, for your presentation. You were actually at the very first DSA Open Finals in 2013 as well, so you've been at it for a couple of years. You said so as well. So yesterday we had a presentation from Simone Kuhn. Right, so she is not a psychologist, but a brain scientist, right? So neuroscientist. So you're mostly working on the behavioral side of things, right? You're looking how computer games influence people's behavior, how they maybe can be a treatment for anxiety. Condition, so to say. Do you, in your research, connect to brain studies as well? Do you look at the changes in brains that people have, or do you just look at behavioral studies?
Well, no, I don't do anything that involves the neural components. So I've worked with Nevermind itself, which uses, again, a heart rate monitor. So I'm looking at those types of processes. And of course, Mindlight does use, brain waves. But we're not actually, the people that are interested in it aren't actually tracking the neural changes of how the pathways are changing. It's the level at which those things are being examined are very kind of real-time measurements of relaxation, as opposed to what I think Simone is more interested in is, real hardwired structures in the brain that are developing and changing over the course of many hours of play, and typically also, I believe, with action games. So that's not as much my focus.
Cool. So I saw that Rutger van Engelen is one of your...
Rutger Engels. Rutger Engels.
Isn't he also the director of the Trimbos Institute?
That's right, yeah. Rutger was, he became CEO of Trimbos Institute about a year ago. That's right.
So that's actually, it's a big coincidence because yesterday some of his colleagues from the Trimbos Institute were here actually to get a bit of a sniff of the esports atmosphere, because they've been tasked to set up kind of like a helpline for parents who are maybe thinking that their children are game addicted. So they wanted to have some information about esports and what it's like. So that's a fun link to you on some.
They should have called me.
Yeah, you probably could have helped. Yeah. So, but I did help them translate a little bit of what was going on here. It's explained to them what the people were doing, so it was good. All right. So one final question, one that's been on everybody's minds, of course, over here, also on the online audience. So you're talking about these games that were designed specifically for dealing with anxiety or other types of disorders. Would you say that, because StarCraft is a game that you've worked with before as well, would you say that games that are currently on the market could also do something like this? Because when I play StarCraft, I do realize that whenever I lose a game, or no, it's the other way around. So whenever I'm like, I don't know what to do, I'll just let my hands do it, right? I'm like, oh, I got a mental block or whatever. I realize that getting better at StarCraft is getting through such such situations where you recognize of yourself that you're stressed and you're not doing what you should be doing. So do you think that games that are currently on the market, not specifically designed for stuff like it, could also be like prescribed by doctors?
Yeah, I love that you asked me that question. I think it's a hugely untapped area. I think there's tremendous potential for existing games. I think it depends a lot on how you play and the mindset that you have. So you describe a very personal experience that you have with it. I think people that can play many different types of video games, ones that are very stressful like StarCraft, ones that are more soothing like a game like Journey. I think that there are very many games that are out there on the market that people, if they're just a little creative with how they're framing it to people that have problems, that can go a long way. And that's not even to say the potential that we have from just modding games that also already exist. Very little, many man hours, but a lot of very good creativity can go a really long way, taking incredible interactive experiences that already exist and making them really meaningful, emotional experiences that are tremendous for growth. So I think it's an untapped potential right now, and I wish more people were as enthusiastic about this idea as myself.
All right, we'll join you in your enthusiasm. Adam, thank you again very much for your very interesting presentation. See you again probably next year. For the people back home and in the audience, we're having a treat coming up, because before we go into the semi-finals between